Hello, my dear friends. Today we're going to learn another 10 common idioms, phrases, and sentences that native English speakers use every single day. These expressions are super useful, and I promise by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what these expressions mean and how to use them naturally in your own conversations. Here's how you can get the most out of this video. First, listen while reading the subtitles. This will help you catch every word and follow along more easily. Then, play the video again and try to repeat the sentences out loud, but this time without reading the subtitles. This will really help you improve your pronunciation, listening, and speaking skills. Don't forget to pause and write down any new expressions you like. That way, you can remember and review them later. This is a great way to boost your listening, reading, and speaking, all at the same time. This lesson is a fun and simple way to improve your English step by step. Before we dive in, if you're finding this helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe. It helps a ton, and I really appreciate your support. All right, let's get started with our first expression. Number 1, read my lips. This phrase means to listen very carefully to what someone is saying, especially when they want to make sure you understand something important. It's like saying, pay close attention to what I'm about to tell you, or I want to be crystal clear about this. You know, this expression comes from the idea that if someone can't hear you well, they might try to read your lips to understand what you're saying. So when we say, read my lips, we're basically saying, look at me and listen carefully because this is important. Let me tell you about my friend Sarah. She was trying to explain to her teenage son that he needed to clean his room before going out with friends. He kept making excuses and not really listening. Finally, she looked him straight in the eyes and said, read my lips, no clean room, no going out. That got his attention real quick. For example, a parent might say to their child, read my lips, you're not getting a new phone until you improve your grades. You might hear something like, read my lips. We are not buying a bigger house right now, we can't afford it. Here's another one. If your friend keeps asking to borrow money but never pays you back, you could say, read my lips. I'm not lending you any more money. Have you ever been in a situation where you really needed someone to pay attention to what you were saying? This phrase is perfect for those moments when you want to be absolutely clear about something important. Number 2, where there is a will, there is a way. This saying means that if you really want to do something badly enough, you will find a way to make it happen. It's all about having determination and not giving up when things get tough. This is actually a really old saying that has been around for hundreds of years. People have been using different versions of this expression to encourage others to keep trying and never give up on their dreams. I remember my neighbor Maria, who always dreamed of going to college but didn't have much money. She worked 2 part-time jobs, studied at night, and applied for every scholarship she could find. When people said it would be impossible, her grandmother would always tell her, Mija, where there is a will, there is a way. And you know what? She did it. She graduated with honors and now she's a teacher. For example, if your friend wants to learn guitar but says they don't have time, you might say, where there is a will, there is a way. You could practice for just 15 minutes before bed. You might hear something like, I know starting your own business seems scary, but where there is a will, there is a way. Let's take this one. She really wanted to visit her family in another country, and where there is a will, there is a way. She saved up enough money by working extra hours. Do you have a big dream that seems impossible right now? Remember this saying and think about small steps you could take to make it happen. Number 3, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This phrase means that if something is working fine the way it is, you shouldn't try to change it or improve it. Sometimes people want to fix or change things that are already working perfectly well, and this expression reminds us that's not always necessary. The word ain't here is informal English for isn't. So basically, we're saying, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Native speakers use ain't in casual conversation all the time, especially in expressions like this one. My dad is a perfect example of this. He has this old coffee maker that he's been using for probably 20 years. My mom keeps saying they should get a new, fancy one with all the modern features. But every morning, that old coffee maker makes perfect coffee without any problems. So my dad always says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And honestly, he's got a point. For example, if your computer is working fine but your friend suggests updating to a new operating system, you might think, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. People often say, the old way of doing this project works great, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Here's another one. My phone is 3 years old but still works perfectly, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What about you? Do you have something old that still works great? Sometimes the old way really is the best way. Number 4. Better safe than sorry. This phrase means it's better to be careful and take precautions, even if it seems unnecessary, than to take risks and regret it later. It's about choosing the safer option to avoid problems. This is such a practical piece of advice that people use in everyday situations. We all know that feeling when we're not sure if we should do something or not, and this phrase helps us remember that being careful is usually the smart choice. Last winter, my friend Tom was planning to drive to the mountains for a ski trip. The weather forecast said there might be snow, but it wasn't certain. His friends were saying he probably didn't need snow chains for his car. But Tom decided to buy them anyway, thinking better safe than sorry. Good thing he did, because it snowed heavily and he was the only one who could drive safely while his friends were stuck. For example, you might say, I'm bringing an umbrella even though it probably won't rain, but better safe than sorry. You might hear something like, let's leave an hour early for the airport. Better safe than sorry. Imagine this. I'm going to back up all my computer files tonight. Better safe than sorry if something goes wrong. Can you think of a time when being extra careful saved you from a problem? That's exactly what this expression is about. Number 5. Actions speak louder than words. This idiom means that what people actually do is more important and meaningful than what they say they will do. It's about judging people based on their behavior, not just their promises. This is such an important life lesson. We've all met people who talk a lot about what they're going to do, but then they never actually do it. This expression reminds us that we should pay attention to what people actually do, not just what they say. I had a coworker named Mike who was always talking about how much he cared about the environment. He would give long speeches about recycling and saving energy. But you know what? He drove a huge gas-guzzling truck, never recycled anything, and left lights on all over the office. Meanwhile, our quiet coworker Jenny never talked about environmental issues, but she rode her bike to work, brought lunch in reusable containers, and always turned off lights. Jenny's actions spoke louder than Mike's words. For example, if someone says they want to be your friend but never calls or spends time with you, you might think, actions speak louder than words. People often say, he promises to help with housework, but actions speak louder than words and he never actually helps. Let's take this one. The company says they care about employees, but actions speak louder than words, and they just cut everyone's benefits. Have you ever noticed this in your own life? Sometimes the people who talk the least actually do the most. Number 6, you catch more flies with honey. This phrase means you get better results when you're sweet and kind to people than when you're mean or demanding. The full saying is actually, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, but most people just say the first part. The idea comes from the fact that flies are attracted to sweet things like honey, but they don't like bitter things like vinegar. So if you want to attract flies, honey works better. When we talk to people, being sweet and kind like honey works better than being sour and mean like vinegar. My sister learned this lesson at her job. She was having trouble getting her team to finish projects on time, and at first, she tried being strict and demanding. That just made everyone frustrated, and they worked even slower. Then she started bringing coffee and donuts to meetings, saying please and thank you more often, and celebrating when people did good work. Suddenly, everything started getting done on time. She realized that you really do catch more flies with honey. For example, if you want your roommate to clean up more, instead of yelling, you might say nicely, "Hey, would you mind helping me keep the kitchen clean? I'd really appreciate it." Remember, you catch more flies with honey. You might hear something like, "I need to ask my boss for time off, so I'll bring her favorite coffee and be extra polite." You catch more flies with honey. Here's another one. Instead of complaining to customer service, I'll be really nice and friendly. You catch more flies with honey. Think about it. When someone is mean to you, do you want to help them? But when someone is kind and polite, don't you feel more willing to help? Number 7, that's my 2 cents. This phrase means, that's my opinion, or here's what I think about this topic. It's a humble way to share your thoughts, like you're saying your opinion might not be worth much, but you want to share it anyway. This expression comes from the old saying, putting in your 2 cents, which means adding your opinion to a conversation. 2 cents is a very small amount of money, so it's like saying your opinion is just a small contribution to the discussion. I was at a family dinner last month where everyone was discussing whether my cousin should quit his job to start his own business. Different relatives were giving all kinds of advice. Finally, my quiet uncle, who usually doesn't say much, spoke up and said, "Well, that's my 2 cents, but I think he should save up more money first before quitting. It's risky to start a business without enough savings." Everyone listened because he doesn't share his opinion very often, so when he does, people pay attention. For example, after listening to friends argue about which movie to see, you might say, "That's my 2 cents, but I think we should see the comedy instead of the action movie." You might hear something like, "I've never been married, but that's my 2 cents." Communication is the most important thing in a relationship. People often say, "I'm not an expert on this topic, but that's my 2 cents. I think you should talk to your manager about the problem." Do you ever hesitate to share your opinion because you think it might not be important? This phrase is a polite way to jump into the conversation. Number 8, as far as I know. This phrase means based on the information I have or according to what I understand. You use it when you want to share information, but you're not completely certain it's correct or complete. This is such a useful phrase because it protects you from saying something wrong. Instead of stating something as a definite fact, you're being honest that your information might not be perfect or complete. Just yesterday, my neighbor asked me if the grocery store on Main Street was still open. I hadn't been there in a few weeks, so I told her, "As far as I know, yes, they're still open, but you might want to call first just to make sure." It turned out they had changed their hours recently, so I was glad I said, "As far as I know," instead of just saying, Yes, they're definitely open. For example, if someone asks about your coworker's vacation plans, you might say, as far as I know, she's going to Mexico next week, but she might have changed her plans. You might hear something like, as far as I know, the meeting is still scheduled for 3 p.m. tomorrow. Imagine this. As far as I know, parking is free on Sundays, but double check the signs to be sure. Have you ever given someone information that turned out to be wrong? Using as far as I know helps you be helpful while being honest about what you're not sure about. Number 9, you're beating a dead horse. This idiom means you're wasting time trying to do something that's impossible or pointless. It's like continuing to argue about something that's already been decided or trying to fix something that can't be fixed. The image here is pretty clear. If a horse is dead, hitting it won't make it move or come back to life. So, beating a dead horse means putting effort into something that will never work or change. My brother is famous for this in our family. Every holiday dinner, he brings up this argument we had about politics, like 5 years ago. He keeps trying to convince everyone he was right, even though we've all moved on and nobody wants to talk about it anymore. Last Christmas, my mom finally said, John, you're beating a dead horse. We've heard this argument 100 times. Can we please talk about something else? He finally got the hint and changed the subject. For example, if your friend keeps complaining about a test grade from last semester, you might say, you're beating a dead horse. The grade is final and the class is over. People often say, stop trying to get your ex-girlfriend back. You're beating a dead horse, she's moved on. Here's another one. The company already decided not to give raises this year, so asking about it again is just beating a dead horse. We all know someone who does this, right? Sometimes you just have to accept that something is over and move on to something new. Number 10. Let's take a vote. This phrase means, let's make a decision by having everyone choose what they prefer. It's a democratic way to decide something when a group can't agree. This is a really practical expression that people use all the time in families, at work, with friends, and in any group situation where you need to make a choice together. Last weekend, I was with a group of friends trying to decide where to go for dinner. One person wanted pizza, another wanted Chinese food, someone else suggested Mexican, and we couldn't agree. We were standing on the street corner for like 10 minutes just going back and forth. Finally, someone said, "Okay, let's take a vote. Everyone who wants pizza, raise your hand." We counted hands for each option, and Chinese food won. It was so much easier than just arguing. For example, in a family trying to pick a vacation destination, someone might say, "We've been discussing this for an hour. Let's take a vote and see where most people want to go." You might hear something like, "The team can't decide on a project deadline. Let's take a vote. Who thinks we need 2 weeks versus 3 weeks?" Imagine this. There are so many good movies playing. Let's take a vote on which one we should see tonight. This is such a fair way to make group decisions, don't you think? Instead of one person deciding for everyone or arguing forever, you just let the group choose together. Let me know in the comments which of these expressions you've heard before. Have you ever used any of them in your own conversations? I'd love to hear your stories about when you might use these in real life. Let's recap what we learned today. We covered 10 super useful expressions that native English speakers use all the time. We learned read my lips for when you want someone to pay close attention. Where there is a will, there is a way reminds us that determination can overcome obstacles. If it ain't broke, don't fix it means leave things alone when they're working fine. Better safe than sorry is about being careful to avoid problems. Actions speak louder than words tells us to judge people by what they do, not what they say. You catch more flies with honey means being nice gets better results than being mean. That's my 2 cents is a humble way to share your opinion. As far as I know, helps you share information when you're not completely certain. You're beating a dead horse means you're wasting time on something pointless. And let's take a vote is how groups make decisions together. Which of these 10 expressions was your favorite today? Are there any that you think you'll start using right away? Let me know in the comments below. If this video helped you understand these common expressions better, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We'll be back tomorrow with 10 more idioms, phrases, and sentences that will help you sound more natural when you speak English. Keep practicing these expressions and don't be afraid to use them in your conversations. The more you practice, the more natural they'll become. Take care and keep practicing your English.